Hello guys, and welcome to the Funny Documentary Channel. Now before we drift into tonight's quiet journey, titled What James Webb Reveals About the Size of the Observable Universe, feel free to like, subscribe, and gently share in the comments when and where you're listening from. Your presence helps shape the calm corners of this channel. Now sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy today's video. Chapter 1. The Quiet Question at the Edge of Everything. The film opens not with numbers, but with a feeling, the ancient human habit of looking up and wondering whether there is an edge to what can be seen. Before there were telescopes, before there were models or measurements, or even the word cosmos, there was simply a pair of eyes tilted toward the night and a mind quietly asking, what happens after this? There is a softness to that question, an uncertainty that never quite fades, no matter how many tools we build to chase it. And tonight, the narration rests inside that early curiosity, allowing it to breathe slowly, the way thoughts do when they rise in the quiet hours before sleep. When people first gazed upward, they didn't see a universe expanding at every point or galaxies drifting apart like lanterns on a dark river. They saw a dome, a ceiling, a rounded enclosure that felt both comforting and mysterious. The first boundary of the universe was simply what the eye could take in at once, a sky that arched overhead and stopped somewhere, though no one could agree exactly where. It was, in its own way, a practical assumption. Most things in daily life came with edges, fields, forests, ocean horizons. It was only reasonable to suspect the sky behaved the same, even if it was slightly less cooperative about showing its borders. As centuries passed, people began to test the sky with imagination long before they tested it with mathematics. Stories emerged of layered heavens, stacked like the floors of a slowly tilting tower. Others imagined the cosmos shaped like an enormous sphere, at whose edges celestial beings tended to their lanterns. In these early worlds, the universe had a shape and a limit, because everything else had a shape and a limit. Humans were simply following the rules they knew. If someone had suggested back then that the universe might not have an edge at all, that it might instead unfold endlessly like a thought that refuses to conclude, most listeners would have smiled politely and then returned to sturdier ideas. Yet even among these early assumptions, there lingered a soft contradiction. If the universe was bounded, then what lay beyond the boundary? And if nothing lay beyond it, how could there be a boundary at all? These questions drifted through human history like a quiet echo, always present, seldom resolved. People found comfort in the idea of edges, even if those edges invited further complications. After all, having a defined edge makes the world feel tidier. The human brain, when confronted with something incomprehensibly large, often decides it would rather not. As understanding grew, the sky above began to shift from a ceiling into a space, vast, layered, and increasingly indifferent to tidy interpretations. Early astronomers, standing beside polished metal instruments that looked something like nautical devices and something like decorative umbrellas, attempted to measure distances between stars. Their tools were limited, their conclusions hesitant, but their ambition was quietly remarkable. There is a certain audacity in looking at tiny, trembling lights separated by unimaginable distance and thinking, yes, we can measure that. It's the kind of confidence only humans possess, the willingness to believe that With enough patience, the universe will eventually sit still for a portrait. With each generation, the picture expanded further. What once seemed like the universe's far wall turned out to be only a local neighborhood. The Milky Way, once thought to be the entire cosmos, became merely one spiral in a vast sea of structures. And humanity, noticing this continual pattern of cosmic upsizing, might have felt a touch of cosmic embarrassment, like realizing the map you've been using shows only a single street. But rather than discouragement, the discovery brought a kind of quiet delight. Each new revelation suggested that the universe had been politely withholding the truth, perhaps waiting until someone built a tool capable of noticing. Throughout this slow unfolding, one persistent question stayed close. Where does it all stop? Even as the universe grew larger in our understanding, the desire for an edge remained. There is something comforting about limits. They give the world shape, a sense of completion. Without them, the mind drifts into open-ended space, which can feel both exhilarating and slightly untethered. Still, the question endured. Is there a place where everything ends? A cosmic frontier past which there is nothing at all? And yet, as instruments improved and knowledge deepened, an odd realization emerged. The universe was not behaving like something that intended to have edges. It showed no inclination toward finite boundaries, no hint of outer walls or celestial fences. What had once seemed intuitive, that everything large must eventually conclude, began to seem like wishful thinking. Even so, the desire to measure persisted, not out of stubbornness, but out of a gentle curiosity. Humans have always been collectors of information, especially about things they cannot reach. Measuring the universe became another expression of that instinct, a way of tracing a finger around the outline of existence, even if the outline kept changing shape. There is, too, a soft humor in the effort. Here we are, perched on a small rock orbiting an unassuming star, confidently declaring our intent to determine the full size of the observable universe. We are like someone standing in a quiet backyard with a ruler and the serene certainty that with enough extensions they might measure the horizon. It is not arrogance so much as endearing persistence, a human trait that, fortunately, the universe seems to tolerate with infinite patience. And so this chapter rests on the threshold of deeper exploration, where curiosity becomes method and wonder becomes measurement. The universe remains vast, elusive, and not particularly inclined to reveal everything at once. Yet the question stays with us, steady and soft. How far does sight go, and what lies just beyond it? The film lingers on that question, allowing it to settle like starlight, faint, distant, and surprisingly comforting, before the journey moves quietly onward into the deeper dark. Chapter 2. Light that takes its time. Here, the story slows into the nature of light itself, not as a formula, but as a traveler. Light becomes a patient messenger, carrying scenes from distant places long after those places have shifted into new forms. It drifts through space with no hurry and no expectation of arrival, simply continuing forward because that is what it was born to do. In this quiet chapter, distance becomes intertwined with time, though the idea does not press itself. It unfolds gently, the way a slow train disappears into fog, steadily, softly, without calling attention to its motion. Light begins its journey in moments of transformation. A star's surface trembles, an atom shifts, or a particle of dust warms briefly, and suddenly something radiant is set free. From that moment on, the light moves outward with unwavering consistency, not because it chooses to, but because motion is the only language it speaks. In a sense, every photon carries a tiny piece of its birthplace, its color, its energy, its mood, preserved as faithfully as a pressed leaf in a book. It has no memory of where it came from, but the signature remains. As it travels, light does not tire or wander. It does not pause to admire the structures it passes, nor does it deviate from its line without a compelling reason, such as gravity bending its path like a gentle suggestion. If light had a personality, and tonight we allow it that luxury, it would be the quiet guest who arrives early, stays late, and causes no disruption whatsoever. Even when a photon collides with matter and disappears into it, the universe treats the event without drama. One journey ends, countless others continue. What makes light so softly captivating is the way it carries history without ever referencing it. When we see the glow from a distant star, we are not witnessing its present self. We are receiving a message sent long ago, one that traveled across expanding space with a kind of patience that would humble any earthly courier. Some of the light reaching us now began its journey before familiar galaxies took shape, long before the elements that make up our bodies ever existed. This traveling glow has crossed vast distances, brushing past clouds of dust, slipping through empty stretches where nothing stirred, simply continuing on minute after minute, millennium after millennium, without ever questioning whether it should keep going. In this sense, astronomy becomes an act of listening to old stories told by messengers that never slow their pace. Light does not age in the way living things do. It does not grow weary or lose coherence from monotony. Instead, its journey is marked only by distance. The farther it travels, the longer ago it began. The connection between space and time emerges naturally here, not as a principle, but as an intuition. Farther objects are older objects, not because they themselves are ancient, but because the light we see carries a version of them that has not been updated in an astonishing length of time. Imagine a small, quiet lantern floating on a dark lake. The farther it drifts, the more delayed its glow appears when reflected on a distant shore. Now replace the lake with the fabric of space, and the lantern with a star, and the same idea lingers, a gentle reminder that the universe sends its information at a pace that humans cannot accelerate. Light travels swiftly by our earthly standards, yet in the scale of the cosmos, its speed becomes a contemplative stroll. There is also something subtly humorous about this situation, though the humor whispers rather than announces itself. The universe communicates at one fixed speed, with no express service available. Light has no intention of arriving sooner, no matter how eagerly observers wait on distant worlds. It continues at its steady pace, as though committed to the belief that cosmic revelations should unfold unhurriedly. If humans could petition for faster delivery, light would probably respond that it is already doing its best. And besides, rushing would only spoil the experience. As light moves, it interacts with the universe in ways that enrich its message. Sometimes it grazes the edges of gravitational fields, curving gently as though responding to an unseen invitation. Other times, it drifts through interstellar clouds, emerging slightly altered, like fabric catching a trace of the scent of a nearby fire. These encounters do not hinder its journey. They simply become part of the story it carries. By the time light reaches us, It often bears the imprint of great distances, stretched, softened, or thinned by the space it crossed. Yet it still arrives intact, delivering a view into a distant past with remarkable fidelity. This quiet reliability is part of its charm. Even after billions of years, light remains perfectly punctual in its own unhurried way, as though the universe entrusted it with a message, and it intends to deliver that message regardless of how long the trip takes. In this chapter, distance and time are allowed to merge softly, without suspense or urgency. What we see in the sky is not the universe as it is, but as it once was. Light preserves these earlier moments and offers them gently, without fanfare, like an old postcard that arrives unexpectedly after decades in the mail. We do not rush to interpret it. We simply hold it, appreciating that something from so far away managed to find us at all. The chapter closes on that quiet note. Light continuing onward, never hurrying, never faltering, carrying with effortless grace the ancient scenes of a universe that reveals itself only at the pace it has always known, slow, steady, and serene. Chapter 3, Seeing Farther by Looking Older. Looking deeper into space is not a matter of sharper eyesight. It is a slow drift backward through time. In this chapter, the narration settles into that peculiar truth with a tranquil ease, as though sinking into a warm pool. The universe, without planning to, has become a vast archive of its own history. Light leaves distant objects and travels outward, carrying memories of what those objects once were, and by the time that light reaches us, the universe has already moved on. It is an accidental library, quiet, sprawling, and completely unorganized, yet somehow still accessible if one is patient enough to piece together the scattered pages. When astronomers look far away, they are not merely observing points of brightness. They are examining scenes preserved from earlier epochs, each one frozen under the conditions that existed when the light first began its long journey. The result is a kind of cosmic time machine, though one without the comforting predictability of buttons or levers. Instead, it operates on a principle of pure distance. The farther out we look, the older the view becomes. This relationship is not dramatic or surprising to the universe. It simply follows from the way light moves. But for humans, it transforms the night sky into something deeper than a present moment. It becomes a layered portrait of time itself. There is a quiet humor in this arrangement. Most galleries display their oldest works in well-lit rooms with plaques announcing their ages and origins. The universe, however, takes a more relaxed approach. Its oldest exhibits are not highlighted. They are tucked so far away that viewers must work diligently just to notice them. Many of these ancient structures are faint, not due to any shyness on their part, but because vast stretches of expanding space have thinned their glow. Observing them requires patience, precision, and sometimes the equivalent of squinting through many layers of cosmic haze. It is as if the universe is gently nudging us to earn each glimpse, offering no shortcuts and certainly no explanatory labels. When an astronomer peers into deep space, what appears on a sensor or photographic plate is not a bustling contemporary galaxy, but a version of it from long ago. Stars that have since aged or vanished appear young and bright. Clouds that may now be dispersed still look dense and luminous. The structures we see are not lies. They are simply earlier drafts. The universe has continued editing itself while their light was en route. This unavoidable delay adds a contemplative softness to the work of cosmology. Every observation carries a note of nostalgia for something that is no longer there as we see it. The deeper one looks, the more the universe reveals its youth, not in the sense of vibrancy or energy, but in the literal sense of showing us frames from its earliest chapters. Some of the faintest smudges on astronomical images are scenes from when the cosmos was still settling into its shape, gathering its first generations of stars, and learning, quite unintentionally, how to shine. These primordial structures are subtle, almost hesitant, as though unsure whether they should make a grand entrance or wait for further development. Their dim presence across the void seems to suggest that creation, like all things, began quietly. There is a certain charm in the universe's reluctance to make things obvious. It does not arrange its history in chronological order. It does not brighten the scenes it feels are important. Instead, it scatters them across billions of light years, lets them drift in and out of clarity, and trusts that any persistent observers will eventually piece things together. Humans, for their part, respond with characteristic determination. They construct ever more delicate instruments and stare into the deep sky until the faintest traces of old light emerge, little hints of how the universe looked before it grew into the vast system of galaxies we know today. These glimpses of cosmic youth often come as a surprise. What appears at first to be a patch of dark emptiness may, after long exposure, reveal a cluster of nascent galaxies whose combined glow barely registers above the background. Detecting them is a process that feels both scientific and cinematic, as if the universe is revealing a hidden scene only when the viewer has settled fully into the moment. The oldest galaxies do not announce themselves. They wait quietly in the dark, offering only the most delicate signals to show that they ever existed. In this calm exploration, the idea of looking farther becomes indistinguishable from the idea of looking earlier. Distance transforms into time with effortless grace, and the night sky becomes a record of moments preserved by nothing more glamorous than the persistence of light. It is a reminder that the universe in all its vastness does not discard its past. It allows those past moments to continue outward indefinitely, carrying their stories through a medium that asks for no reward. And so when astronomers search the deep night for its faintest structures, they are not merely probing space. They are reading a scrapbook assembled over billions of years, one that began long before any eyes existed to appreciate it. The universe did not intend to create this archive. It simply happened because light cannot help but travel, and space cannot help but preserve its passage. The chapter closes with that quiet understanding that to see farther is to see older, and that the universe reveals its ancient moments not through intention, but through the simple, ongoing movement of light across a landscape that spans both distance and time. Chapter 4. Why the universe has a horizon. Without formulas or diagrams, this chapter eases into the idea of the observable universe as something quieter than a boundary. It is a horizon, soft, shifting, and shaped not by the universe's willingness to be seen, but by the simple limits of what light has had time to bring us. The distinction is gentle yet profound. A boundary implies an edge, an ending, a final place where the cosmos politely stops. A horizon implies continuation, more ocean beyond the mist, more sky past the clouds, more existence stretching softly outward. The universe, as it turns out, favors horizons. To understand this horizon, imagine standing at the edge of a calm sea. The water stretches toward the distance until it melts into sky, forming a line that seems definite and physical, and yet dissolves instantly upon approach. The ocean does not stop there. It merely becomes unreachable to the eye. Anyone who has gazed from a shoreline knows the quiet pull of that illusion, how the world seems to narrow into a meeting point of blue and blue, even as reason insists the water continues. The universe behaves with similar subtlety. We see as far as light has traveled to meet us, and no farther. Beyond that, not emptiness. Simply more universe waiting patiently, unreachable only because its ancient light has not yet arrived. In the earliest days of astronomy, this horizon was often mistaken for a final edge. The stars appeared arranged upon a single grand sphere, a decorative ceiling placed overhead with no hint of greater depths. It was an understandable conclusion. Human senses are practical rather than extravagant. They show what is near, what is necessary, what fits comfortably within survival's narrow frame. They do not reveal the fullness of cosmic reality, and perhaps that is a kindness. A sky that stretches without limit might have felt overwhelming to early observers. A firm dome, on the other hand, offers structure, something the mind can rest against. Yet, as understanding grew, the sky began to reveal its layered nature. Stars were not points on a surface, but flames scattered through volume. Darkness was not absence, but depth, and the edge that had once felt firm became less like a wall and more like a fading gradient. Observers realized that the limit of sight was shaped not by where the universe chose to end, but by how far the universe had been able to send its messengers. Light needed time, and the universe, though generous with space, had only existed for a certain number of years. There had simply not been enough time for light from every corner to complete its journey. This notion carries a quiet humor. The universe is not withholding anything deliberately. It is merely following its own schedule. Some regions are too far away for their light to have arrived yet, like distant guests still making their way to a gathering that started billions of years ago. They may be perfectly real and perhaps quite interesting, but they remain hidden for reasons entirely beyond their control. If they could write, they might send apologies. Running late, please begin without us. The horizon of the observable universe is therefore a moving thing. As more time passes, more light arrives, and our view expands. It does not expand quickly, more like the slow growth of frost on a window pane, but the increase is steady, subtle, and inevitable. Each year, the horizon pushes outward, embracing regions of space we had not known were there. The universe, in this sense, comes into focus gradually, though never entirely. No matter how far the horizon reaches, there will always be more beyond it, waiting in the wings. This horizon has a certain softness that mirrors natural landscapes. It has no thickness, no surface, no abrupt shift. It is not a curtain that could be drawn aside with the right technique. It is simply the distance where visibility dissolves. And just as the ocean horizon depends on a person's height above the water, the cosmic horizon depends on how long the universe has been shining. The farther light can travel through time, the farther we can see into space. There is something quietly comforting about this arrangement. It means the universe is open-ended, but never overwhelming. It offers a finite view within an infinite expanse, enough to explore without asking the mind to comprehend all of existence at once. The horizon gives shape to the cosmos without confining it. It suggests boundaries without enforcing them. It allows humanity to approach the mystery of the universe slowly, without the pressure of expecting a complete answer. The observable universe, then, is not a structure imposed by space, but a relationship created by time. We exist in a particular moment, and that moment determines how far the oldest light has traveled. If the universe were older, our horizon would be wider. If it were younger, the horizon would curl inward like a closing flower. The sightline is dynamic, evolving with every passing second, though the shift is so gentle that no one feels the cosmos widening beneath their gaze. And so the chapter settles into that idea. The horizon is not a dismissal or a denial, but a calm acknowledgement that all seeing has its limits. Beyond our reach, the universe continues without hesitation. Galaxies drift, stars ignite, unknown structures form and fade, all while their light travels toward us with the patient certainty of something that intends to arrive eventually, but sees no reason to rush. The pacing slows noticeably here, allowing the listener to rest inside the simple truth that vision ends not because reality stops, but because time has not yet carried its stories to us. The horizon is an invitation, not a gate, a soft threshold between what has reached us and what someday may. Chapter 5. A telescope designed for darkness. This chapter begins not with the telescope itself, but with the quiet dilemma that called it into existence. By the time ancient light wanders across widening space to reach us, it often arrives stretched thin, its once brisk wavelengths elongated into something softer, something gentler, something that no ordinary eye or mirror could hope to interpret. The earliest galaxies, the ones formed when the universe was still learning the basics of structure, have had their light pulled into deeper hues by an ever-expanding cosmos. Looking for them with visible light telescopes would be like trying to hear a whisper through a wall using only a megaphone. The tool simply wouldn't match the task. And so the need grew for something different, an instrument that could lean close to the universe's faintest signals, listening not for brightness, but for warmth, for glow, for the thin remnants of light stretched by billions of years of cosmic drift. The James Webb Space Telescope did not emerge as an act of technological bravado. It emerged as a quiet concession to reality. Humanity, after centuries of insisting the universe raise its voice, finally admitted that if we wanted to understand the earliest chapters of cosmic history, we would need to lower ours instead. The universe was clearly speaking in hushed tones, and perhaps it always had been. We simply hadn't been listening properly. To understand Webb's purpose, imagine a vast hall filled with echoes. Somewhere within that hall lies a whisper, fragile, distant, and nearly indistinguishable from the stillness around it. A typical telescope searches for voices, for clear statements of light, for luminous declarations from stars and galaxies eager to show off their brilliance. Webb, by contrast, was built to attend to the background murmur, the subtle warmth left behind by ancient objects long since dimmed. It is less a machine of sight than a machine of patience, its golden mirrors arranged not for brightness, but for depth, as if cupped around the cosmos in a gentle gesture of listening. Most telescopes observe invisible light, the narrow band of electromagnetic energy that human eyes happen to detect. It is a useful range, practical and lively, filled with color and contrast. But light that has traveled across the vast stretches of the cosmos ages in a particular way. It stretches. The universe, expanding steadily, lengthens each wave of light as if encouraging it to relax. What began as bright and sharp becomes muted, drawn out into the infrared, a region of the spectrum normally associated with warmth, embers, and the subtle radiance of cooling objects. To observe the earliest galaxies, then, one must work with this transformed light. It is no longer a shout, but a sigh, no longer an announcement, but a murmur, carrying its story in extended wavelengths that require exquisite sensitivity to detect. Webb's mirrors, coated in gold for their efficiency with infrared light, were designed specifically for this purpose. Gold does not tarnish easily, and in the cold vacuum of space, it reflects infrared with a smoothness that borders on poetic. The telescope's segmented, honeycomb-like structure appears almost decorative at first glance, as though the designers allowed themselves a moment of indulgence. Yet each angle, each curve, each reflective surface serves a single purpose: to gather as much soft, stretched light as possible. The telescope operates far from Earth, stationed in a region where our planet cannot easily warm or blind it. This distance is not merely practical, it is necessary. To detect faint warmth from the earliest stars, Webb must remain colder than the objects it observes. It is wrapped in a vast sun shield, a thin, silvery structure that unfurls in space like a quiet parasol, shading the telescope from the glow of the sun, the earth, and even the moon. Its instruments chill themselves to temperatures approaching the interstellar cold, settling into a kind of meditative stillness. Only in this frozen tranquility can Webb distinguish between the ancient glow of distant galaxies and the far more intrusive warmth of its own machinery. There is a subtle humor in this arrangement. After centuries of building telescopes that demanded clearer skies, larger mirrors, and more powerful lenses, humanity now found itself designing a machine whose primary task was to sit in the dark and stay quiet. Webb is not searching for fireworks. It is searching for the dimmest embers of cosmic dawn, observing the universe at a stage when stars flickered uncertainly and galaxies assembled themselves with the tentative coordination of early structures. It is an instrument built not for spectacle, but for subtlety. Describing Webb as a listener is not poetic exaggeration. It reflects the telescope's true sensitivity. It can detect tiny shifts in temperature, faint traces of infrared radiation, and the most delicate signatures of distant dust. Its sensors are tuned so finely that they would notice the heat of a bumblebee on the moon if such a creature ever decided to make the trip. This attentiveness is essential because the early universe does not offer bold statements. It offers hints, suggestions, and quiet glimmers, enough to guide an observer willing to listen closely, but never enough for anyone hoping for loud declarations. In turning its golden face toward the deep dark, Webb acknowledges a truth that astronomers gradually came to accept. The universe reveals its deepest secrets only to those who meet it where it is, not where they wish it would be. If ancient light has stretched itself into gentle wavelengths, then we must build a telescope that welcomes those wavelengths without complaint. If the cosmos prefers to whisper, then we must construct an instrument that understands whispers. And so the chapter rests on this image, a lone telescope, drift in the cold, its mirrors arranged like open hands, gathering the faint warmth of distant times. It does not rush, it does not demand, and it does not insist that the universe speak more loudly. Instead, it listens, carefully, quietly, and with a kind of reverence for the long journeys that ancient light has made just to arrive here, now, in front of its golden gaze. Chapter 6. Infrared and the Art of Patience. Infrared light lives in a quieter part of the spectrum, a place where radiance has softened into warmth, and brilliance has settled into a steady, unassuming glow. It is not the light of fireworks or blazing stars seen at their energetic peak. It is the light of embers, of twilight, of heat, gently leaving a surface long after its moment of burning intensity has passed. In this chapter, the narrative leans into that sensorial world, letting infrared stretch across the imagination like the fading warmth of a hand lifted from a smooth stone. It is not a dramatic form of illumination. It is a lingering one. Infrared light does not announce itself boldly. It is the realm of what remains after other wavelengths have scattered or dimmed. Its stories are carried in long, measured waves, waves that feel less like motion and more like exhalation. If visible light is the cosmos speaking clearly, infrared is the cosmos murmuring to itself, unaware that anyone might be listening. And yet, this is the region where some of the most ancient signals reside. Over time, the universe has stretched their shorter wavelengths into these long, gentle ripples. They are the echoes of distant beginnings arriving as softened memories. Standing in the presence of infrared is a bit like standing in a room moments after a candle has been extinguished. The glow is gone, but the warmth remains, behaving almost like a scent that lingers in the air. This lingering quality is what makes infrared so useful to astronomers seeking the earliest galaxies. Those galaxies were never especially bright, even in their youth. They flickered into existence before the cosmos had settled into its current rhythm, forming stars and structures with a tentative delicacy. Their light was always modest, but after billions of years of cosmic stretching, it has become even more subtle, more of a whisper than a proclamation. To detect such stretched echoes requires an approach that values stillness as much as sensitivity. Infrared astronomy is not about catching a flash of light. It is about welcoming something barely there, something that arrives slowly and quietly and only becomes meaningful when the observer is willing to wait. In that sense, infrared is not merely a wavelength, it is a discipline. It teaches patience in the way a long walk at dusk teaches the mind to settle. Imagine watching the last traces of sunlight fade from a hillside. As the visible colors drain away, a softer radiance takes their place, not enough to cast shadows, but enough to assure you that the landscape has not vanished. Infrared lives in this afterglow. It carries information about objects that are too cool, too ancient, or too distant to send anything brighter. It is the domain of what persists rather than what shines, and it rewards those who look for endurance rather than spectacle. The James Webb Space Telescope, built to sense these delicate wavelengths, treats infrared not as a secondary mode of light, but as a primary language. Its instruments are cooled to frigid temperatures so that they do not create their own warmth and drown out the faint signals drifting in from distant galaxies. It is an almost monastic kind of restraint, an instrument so dedicated to listening that it must silence even its own internal heat to avoid interrupting the cosmic conversation. Infrared light carries stories ordinary light cannot. It can slip through clouds of dust that would block visible wavelengths entirely, revealing structures hidden within glowing veils. It can portray the shapes of galaxies that are otherwise concealed, allowing astronomers to trace the faint footprints of early cosmic growth. In this sense, infrared is not simply a method of vision, it is a method of uncovering what the universe prefers to keep under subtle layers. And yet, for all its usefulness, infrared never loses its softness. Even when it reveals entire galaxies, it does so gently, outlining structures in faint gradients rather than sharp lines. There is no urgency in infrared imaging, no dramatic contrast demanding immediate interpretation. Instead, it encourages a slower mode of seeing, one that invites the observer to settle into the details with patience rather than speed. There is a quiet humor in how much effort humanity invests in detecting something so faint. Powerful instruments, frozen machinery, and years of engineering, all to catch waves of warmth barely distinguishable from the cold of space. It is a bit like building an elaborate listening room simply to hear the softest note in an ancient song. And yet, the effort is rewarded, for the song is worth hearing. Infrared carries the timbre of age, the softness of distance, and the unhurried imprint of galaxies formed when the cosmos was still learning how to become itself. The most distant galaxies reveal themselves in this gentle radiance. They appear not as flashing beacons, but as small, stretched forms. Their light is elongated by the expansion of space, their silhouettes softened by unimaginable travel time. To see them clearly requires the observer to adopt their pace, slow, steady, unpressured. One must wait for the faint imprint to accumulate, to emerge, to declare itself in quiet tones. The universe's earliest storytellers do not speak loudly, but they speak truly. As the chapter unfolds, the narrative rests in the understanding that infrared vision is not about brightness. It is about persistence. These delicate waves have crossed the deep fabric of space for billions of years, surviving dilution and expansion, arriving with the patient certainty of something that never expected urgency. Their presence is a reminder that not all cosmic revelations blaze forth. Some drift gently into view, inviting the listener to lean closer, breathe slower, and allow the story to tell itself in its own time. And so the chapter ends in this subdued warmth. Infrared light glows faintly at the edge of perception, carrying the subtle signatures of galaxies that began long before our world took shape. It is the art of patience captured in a wavelength, the universe whispering across unimaginable distances, trusting that someone, eventually, will be quiet enough to hear. Chapter 7. Galaxies that shouldn't quite be there. When the first deep images arrived from the James Webb Space Telescope, astronomers found themselves staring at galaxies that seemed to have appeared a little too early, a little too bright, and, by cosmic standards, a little too put together for their age. The expectation had been that the earliest galaxies would resemble faint smudges, small gatherings of young stars still figuring out how to assemble themselves into stable shapes. Instead, some of them emerged with surprising clarity, as though the universe had decided to skip several steps of development and present a finished product long before the instructions had been written. The tone surrounding this discovery was not panic or disbelief, but a kind of quiet, bemused astonishment. Astronomers are accustomed to surprises. The universe has a long history of producing results that do not match our neat diagrams. Yet, there was something especially charming in how confidently these early galaxies presented themselves. They were bright where dimness was expected, organized where disorder was predicted, and unmistakably present in regions of cosmic time where their existence seemed improbable. It was as if the universe had politely disregarded all previously agreed upon schedules. To understand why their appearance felt so unexpected, imagine planting a small seedling and returning the next day to find a mature tree, fully leafed and quietly swaying in the breeze. Not impossible, perhaps, but certainly ahead of schedule. These early galaxies contained more stars, more structure, and more mass than models had suggested could assemble so soon after the cosmic dawn. Their shapes were not the tentative clusters one might anticipate from such youthful regions of the universe. Instead, they showed hints of rotation, curvature, and even the beginnings of spiral formation, features typically associated with galaxies that have had far more time to settle into themselves. And yet, the surprise was not alarming. It felt more like discovering that the universe had been industrious in its early years, working efficiently and without waiting for anyone's approval. It had formed structures quickly, confidently, and perhaps with a certain eagerness. The stars within these galaxies glowed with intensity, their combined light traveling across eons to reveal signatures of early cosmic ambition. One might imagine the universe, if it could offer commentary, quietly suggesting that it had been busy long before astronomers arrived to check its progress. These galaxies challenged assumptions, not because they defied the laws of physics, but because they hinted that cosmic growth may have been more vigorous in its infancy than previously assumed. Materials condensed more rapidly, stars ignited more readily, and gravitational structures coalesced with surprising speed. It was a reminder that models, however carefully constructed, are always approximations of nature, and nature frequently chooses to operate on timelines that do not consult theoretical expectations. There is a gentle humor in the notion that the cosmos has its own pace, one that occasionally accelerates without warning. Scientists had not predicted such early maturity in galactic structure. They had envisioned something more tentative, more experimental. Instead, the universe delivered systems that looked remarkably confident, almost as if they were eager to get started. It was a moment that sparked not frustration, but admiration, the kind reserved for someone who finishes assembling a complex piece of furniture long before you have even identified all the screws. The brightness of these galaxies added another layer of intrigue. Brightness in the early universe suggests star formation activities that were both intense and efficient. Massive stars must have formed quickly and in abundance, illuminating these galaxies far more than expected for their era. Their light, stretched into infrared by billions of years of expansion, still carried the imprint of this early vigor. These were not tentative collections of dim sparks. They were lively systems, radiating with youthful intensity that somehow endured the long journey across time. Structure, too, came as a surprise. Many of the early galaxies displayed symmetry and coherence, qualities normally associated with far older systems. Their stars moved in coordinated patterns rather than chaotic flurries. Their shapes held recognizable forms rather than formless clouds. It was as though these galaxies had skipped the awkward phases of early development and moved directly into early adulthood, cosmically speaking. This did not diminish their beauty. If anything, it amplified it. Observing these well-formed shapes in such early epochs invited a new appreciation for how swiftly the universe can organize itself when conditions allow. It also offered gentle encouragement for humility. For all the equations, predictions, and carefully plotted models, the universe consistently reserves the right to behave in ways that exceed expectations. There is something softly philosophical in this. Human schedules are precise, structured things. The universe, by contrast, seems to treat time as an open canvas, stretching, compressing, or accelerating its processes without notice. These unexpected galaxies served as a quiet reminder of that difference. They were not mistakes. They were simply early entries in a story whose pacing is far more fluid than linear timelines suggest. The chapter lingers on the notion that surprise is not an interruption to understanding, but an invitation to expand it. Each of these galaxies, larger, brighter, or more elegant than predicted, adds texture to the cosmic narrative. They reveal not a flaw in reasoning, but a richness in reality. And their presence encourages scientists to revisit the assumptions that guided earlier thinking, refining models to accommodate a universe that clearly prefers to be more dynamic, more efficient, and occasionally more assertive than expected. And so the chapter ends with a quiet smile at the cosmos's gentle disregard for schedules. The early universe was not slow to evolve, nor shy in its creations. It blossomed with galaxies that emerged sooner than anyone had planned. Galaxies that, in their own calm way, remind us that the cosmos has always followed its own timeline, one that sometimes chooses to run delightfully ahead. Chapter 8. Expansion without a center. The narration drifts now into the idea of cosmic expansion, not as a violent event, but as a quiet and continuous stretching of space itself. It is tempting to imagine some central point from which everything is rushing outward, as though the universe were a vast firework scene in slow motion. But the truth, as gentle as it is counterintuitive, is that there is no privileged location, no cosmic capital city from which existence radiates. Instead, the universe grows everywhere at once, each region participating equally in a process that feels less like an explosion and more like the soft opening of a flower, one so large that no single petal knows it belongs to a bloom. To settle into this idea, picture a still, calm pond. Drop a stone into its center, and ripples expand outward in perfect widening circles. This image is familiar and intuitive, but the universe behaves nothing like this. There was no single point in space where the expansion began, because space itself was the thing expanding. The analogy breaks down because the pond existed before the ripples, while the universe did not exist before its stretching began. Space unfurled from within itself, in all directions, in every location, simultaneously. The mind may pause at this, not out of confusion, but because the idea is unhurried and unforced, an invitation rather than an instruction. It is perfectly acceptable to rest within the concept without demanding complete clarity. The universe offers many ideas that drift more comfortably through the imagination when held lightly, like a leaf floating downstream. In the earliest moments after the cosmic beginning, space expanded rapidly, not outward from a center, but uniformly, like dough rising in every direction. No point within the dough can claim to be the origin of the rising. Each bit simply moves away from every other bit as the whole volume increases. If a universe could shrug politely, this one might do so now, offering the subtle reassurance that no special location exists. No cosmic favoritism is at play. Every region is equally unremarkable, equally important, equally swept into the quiet process of growth. This expansion continues today, though no longer with the fiery urgency of its initial moments. Now, it proceeds with a smooth, steady rhythm, one that cannot be felt locally, but becomes evident when viewed across vast distances. Galaxies far from our own drift away not because they are propelling themselves outward, but because the space between all galaxies is stretching. Even galaxies that are not in motion relative to their surroundings appear to separate as the fabric connecting them lengthens. It is a serene process, silent and unhurried. A galaxy does not sense this stretching. Stars do not notice. Planets continue their orbits in oblivious calm. The expansion of space is too uniform, too gentle, too grand to affect the smaller gravitational systems nested within it. It is only when one looks across millions or billions of light years that the movement becomes perceptible, like seeing a distant hillside gradually brighten under the rising sun while the ground beneath one's feet remains unchanged. The absence of a center is one of the universe's more subtle jokes, an idea so contrary to human intuition that it often elicits a soft smile. People tend to seek focal points, the heart of a city, the source of a river, the center of a storm. But cosmic expansion denies that simplicity. Each observer, no matter where they stand, appears to be at the middle of the outward drift. From every vantage point, galaxies recede in all directions. It is not because one location is privileged, it is because the expansion is uniform. Space grows everywhere, weaving distance gently between all things. There is a calming egalitarianism to this. No corner of the universe can claim priority. No region is the starting point. All locations share the same role, participants in a cosmic stretching that has no edges and no central hub. One might say the universe is democratic in its growth, though if it heard the comparison, it would likely remain politely indifferent. This expanding space also affects the light traveling through it. As distance increases, the light's wavelength stretches, cooling and softening its character. The process is not hurried. It unfolds across billions of years, shaping the color and tone of cosmic signals with a patient hand. In this way, expansion is not merely a spatial phenomenon. It becomes a sculptor of the universe's visible past, altering what arrives to us from distant epochs. To rest in this idea is to allow the mind to float gently without searching for firm edges. There is no need for sharp comprehension. The universe expands whether or not we grasp every nuance. The important thing is the feeling of the concept, that space is not static, but alive with quiet motion. That galaxies drift not because they choose to move, but because the ground beneath them grows. That every point in the cosmos is a witness to an unfolding that began long before stars existed and continues even now. The chapter settles into a deep calm here. There is no urgency to understand expansion fully, no expectation that the listener must resolve its abstract qualities. Instead, it offers itself as a soothing idea, a universe that unfolds like a slow breath, its fabric stretching gently in all directions, with no center and no favored place, embracing everything equally in its ongoing and effortless growth. Chapter 9, How Size is Inferred, Not Measured. In this chapter, the narration turns toward the quiet art of inferring size, an approach shaped as much by patience as by logic. The universe, vast beyond direct observation, does not lend itself to simple measurement. No one can walk its perimeter or trace a fingertip along its edge. Instead, scientists learn its scale the way one might understand a cavern by listening to echoes or sense a mountain's height by the thinning of the air. The process is indirect, subtle, and deeply reliant on patterns that reveal themselves only when observed with care. Rather than reaching outward with a tape measure, astronomers listen. They listen to how light changes as it travels, to how distant structures drift apart, to the rhythm of cosmic motions that unfold too slowly for a human lifetime to perceive directly. The universe speaks in shifts, in signals, in gentle consistencies. From these, its size emerges not as a crisp number, but as an understanding, one that grows more refined each time a new whisper reaches our instruments. The idea may seem unusual at first. We are accustomed to measurement as something tactile, something involving rulers, scales, or lengths drawn cleanly across a surface. But the universe offers no direct reference points. It has no signposts at its edges, no walls to mark the boundary between what exists and what does not. We cannot step outside of it and look back, the way one might step out of a house to admire its shape. We live entirely within its interior, a condition that invites humility. All estimates must be made from within, based on signals that traverse cosmic distances and arrive carrying faint clues about where they originated. Light becomes one of the most informative of these clues, not because it reveals everything, but because it interacts with space in ways that preserve hints of scale. As light travels, it stretches, shifts, and transforms in tones that depend subtly on the distances it has crossed. The farther it journeys, the more its character changes, as though the universe gently adjusts its color to reflect the length of its travels. Scientists interpret these changes the way one might interpret the echoes in a long hallway. A short echo suggests a nearby wall. A long, softening echo suggests distance that extends beyond sight. But unlike a hallway, whose structure we can independently confirm, the cosmos offers echoes without revealing the architecture that shapes them. Interpreting these signals requires models, careful arrangements of assumptions that must be tested, expanded, and revised as new information arrives. It is a process that rewards both curiosity and restraint. A discovery that appears to enlarge the universe's estimated size may later be refined, not because the universe changed, but because our interpretation became more precise. Patterns play an equally central role. When astronomers observe distant galaxies, they not only note their brightness or shape, but also their distribution. How galaxies cluster, how they drift, how they seem to arrange themselves across the sky. All of these patterns offer insight into the scale of the stage upon which they reside. If galaxies were sprinkled randomly, size might remain more obscure. But their subtle alignments and separations form a kind of cosmic fingerprint. By studying the spacing between such structures, scientists begin to understand the breadth of the universe's expanse, much as one might estimate the size of a forest by observing how its trees thin toward the horizon. There is a quiet humility in this method. It acknowledges the limits of what can be known directly while still embracing the possibility of understanding. The universe does not hand out its measurements freely. It offers hints, partial glimpses, and threads of consistency that require careful weaving. Those who study its size must accept that certainty is rare, and that knowledge often arrives in gradients rather than declarations. This approach also leaves space for wonder. There is something contemplative in the idea that the universe's scale is not a fixed quantity to be captured, but an unfolding understanding, one that reflects both the cosmos's nature and our ability to interpret it. Each new instrument sharpens the picture, yet the picture itself always retains a degree of softness, as though the universe prefers to remain partially veiled. The boundaries of the observable region expand with each passing moment as light continues its long journey toward us, subtly increasing what can be known. In this sense, our understanding of size is dynamic, breathing gently with time. Even the terminology reflects this humility. Astronomers do not speak of the universe's edge. They speak of horizons, of limits defined not by the cosmos, but by light's long and patient journey. The universe may extend far beyond what we can observe, perhaps in ways inconsistent with intuition. Our picture of its scale is shaped by what has had time to reach us, not by what exists in total. This distinction encourages a kind of reflective calm, reminding us that not all knowledge arrives at once. Indirect measurement also brings a quiet humor. It is faint, but present, embedded in the fact that humanity has built sophisticated instruments, launched telescopes beyond the reach of Earth, and constructed elaborate models, all in pursuit of a size we cannot measure directly. It is as though we are trying to determine the dimensions of a room while standing inside it with the lights off, waiting patiently for sounds to return from unseen walls. And yet, despite the challenge, the estimates grow ever more precise. The chapter rests here in a reflective mood that honors both the ingenuity and the restraint required to infer something as grand as the scale of the universe. We do not measure it by stepping outside. We measure it by listening inward, by reading the subtle patterns left behind by light and motion. From these clues, the universe's size reveals itself, not as an exact figure etched in stone, but as an understanding that deepens gradually, an understanding earned through patience, humility, and the quiet art of inferring what cannot be touched. Chapter 10. The Stretching of Space Itself. In this chapter, the narration drifts into the quiet mechanics of expansion, not the idea of galaxies flinging themselves outward in dramatic fashion, but the gentler truth that space itself is stretching, carrying everything along with it. This is not motion in the familiar sense. No acceleration presses against star systems. No cosmic wind sweeps galaxies forward. Instead, the fabric of space lengthens, calmly and impartially, like a woven sheet being pulled ever so slightly at all edges. The galaxies are not racing. They are simply being carried, unhurried and unresisted, by the slow widening of the stage upon which they rest. It is a concept that invites a slower kind of thinking, the sort that allows images to form gradually, free of urgency. One might imagine a drawing printed on a flexible cloth. As the cloth stretches, the images drift apart, not because the ink moves, but because the surface beneath it changes. The shapes remain intact, the colors unchanged, yet the distances grow. In this analogy, the galaxies are the drawings. The cloth is space, and the stretching is so steady, so even, that the shapes atop it scarcely notice. Space does not stretch with enthusiasm or intent. It simply continues the behavior it began long ago. There is no cosmic command dictating the pace. The expansion is woven into the nature of the universe, as intrinsic as the texture of fabric is to cloth. If space could speak, it might gently assure us that it is not striving toward anything. It is merely following its own properties, indifferent to whether anyone is watching. The universe is not in a hurry. It is simply ongoing. The stretching of space has a quiet elegance, one that contrasts with common images of explosive beginnings. Expansion is often imagined as a force, energetic and forceful, pushing galaxies outward with dramatic flair. But the truth is far softer. Space stretches uniformly without shoves or jolts. Galaxies remain gravitationally bound within their local clusters, moving in their own gentle orbits, unaware of the grand widening on the scale beyond. The stretching occurs between clusters in the vast distances where gravitational connections grow thin. It is there, between great islands of stars, that the fabric lengthens most noticeably. Even then, noticeably is a generous word. No living creature could witness this stretching directly. Human lifetimes are too brief, galactic motions too slow. Expansion reveals itself only through the light of distant objects, through the softened wavelengths that have traveled across space altered by the journey. The universe stretches quietly, rhythmically, with no sign of strain. It is steady, patient, and unbothered by the immensity of its own undertaking. This slowness is part of its character. Space expands the way a tide rises, not suddenly, but persistently. The great distances between galaxy clusters lengthen at a rate that feels almost ceremonial. Every moment contributes a microscopic amount, yet these microscopic amounts accumulate, shaping the cosmos in ways that become profound only when viewed across billions of years. Expansion is not an event. It is a condition, ambient, continuous, and surprisingly tranquil. There is something soothing in the idea that galaxies are carried rather than propelled. Motion usually implies direction and intention, but the expansion of space carries no such implication. A galaxy drifting away from another does not choose its path, nor does it resist the movement. It simply goes where space allows it to go. The stretching fabric guides the dance, and the galaxies follow without effort. It is cosmic choreography without urgency, a movement so broad in scale that each participant remains unaware of its role. On smaller scales, expansion is imperceptible. Planets do not drift away from their stars. Stars do not loosen from their clusters. Gravity holds these systems together with far more strength than the quiet stretching can challenge. The expansion becomes significant only across enormous distances, distances so vast that they dwarf imagination. It is a process that respects the integrity of local structures while redefining the shape of the cosmos itself. The indifference of expansion can be oddly comforting. Human experience is filled with forces that push or pull, that require effort or evoke resistance. But the expansion of space does none of these things. It does not intrude upon daily existence. It does not demand interpretation. It continues regardless of comprehension, a background rhythm that has persisted since the universe's earliest moments. The galaxies drift with it, carried as easily as leaves on a wide, slow-moving river, though even this metaphor introduces more turbulence than the cosmos displays. If there is humor here, it is subtle and serene. One might smile at the thought that galaxies are participating in an enormous journey without ever feeling it. They traverse unimaginable distances without gaining speed. Their motion is not motion as we know it. It is the quiet inevitability of space itself becoming more spacious. The universe expands not to accommodate anything, but because that is its nature. Its growth is as unbothered as the spreading of shadows at dusk. To rest inside this idea is to accept the vastness of the cosmos without needing to grasp every detail. Expansion becomes less of a puzzle and more of a backdrop, a gentle condition of existence rather than a phenomenon demanding explanation. The rhythm of stretching space is slow enough to soothe, broad enough to humble, and constant enough to suggest that the universe, for all its complexity, evolves with an underlying simplicity. In this calm understanding, the chapter settles. Space stretches. Galaxies drift. Nothing rushes. Nothing strains. The universe continues, quietly and steadily, enlarging itself in a movement so smooth that only those who study the faintest signals of the distant sky ever notice its presence. It is a reminder that not all cosmic changes are dramatic. Some unfold like a slow breath, unhurried, expansive, and serene. Chapter 11, What Bigger Than We Thought Really Means. When astronomers say the universe is bigger than we thought, the phrase often inspires a moment of breathless awe, as though the cosmos had quietly slipped out at night to add extra rooms, extend a few hallways, and generally expand its floor plan without notifying anyone. But within the calm of this chapter, the idea takes on a softer, more grounded meaning. Bigger is not a sudden leap into the infinite. It is simply a gentle correction, a nudge that reminds us our earlier expectations were a touch too modest. The universe has a way of doing this, offering subtle adjustments that expand our perspective while keeping its own composure entirely intact. The process rarely unfolds with fireworks. More often, it begins with a measurement, a pattern, or the faint signal of light from a region we had not previously included in our map of the observable sky. Astronomers compare predictions with observations and notice a slight mismatch. Perhaps a distant galaxy is brighter than expected, or a cluster appears in a region where the models predicted quiet cosmic emptiness. Slowly, carefully, the implications emerge. The observable universe extends a bit farther than earlier estimates suggested. The difference is not dramatic. It is not meant to send anyone into existential spirals. It is simply a sign that our cosmic rulers require now and then a gentle recalibration. There is a dry humor in how frequently humanity encounters this pattern. We draw outlines around the universe with the best information available. The universe examines these outlines, says nothing, and then proceeds to reveal features that fall politely outside the boundaries we sketched. It is never rude about this. It simply continues to exist at the scale it always has, unconcerned with whether its dimensions align with our calculations. One might imagine the cosmos offering a mild apology for the inconvenience, though not enough of one to actually stop being larger. The phrase, bigger than we thought, also carries a quiet reminder of how knowledge grows. Each generation builds its models from the data available, forming conclusions with admirable confidence. Later discoveries refine the picture. Our ancestors once believed that everything they could see composed the entirety of the world. Later, they discovered continents beyond the horizon. Later still, astronomers learned that the Milky Way was not the whole universe, merely one island among billions. Today, we find that even our estimates of the observable expanse, crafted with careful attention and powerful instruments, benefit from occasional updating. The universe, it seems, has always been gently one step ahead of us, expanding our understanding by degrees rather than leaps. This incremental growth in comprehension fosters a sense of humility that feels peaceful rather than unsettling. It suggests that our knowledge, like the universe itself, is something that unfolds over time. We do not need to know everything at once. We cannot, in fact. And the cosmos does not require us to. It offers hints at its scale through the behavior of distant light, through patterns of clustering, through the faint tug of expansion on the fabric of space. These hints are abundant enough to guide inquiry, yet subtle enough to keep certainty at bay. When scientists revise their estimates upward, when new observations reveal galaxies existing farther out than previously confirmed or light arriving from earlier cosmic eras, it does not mean that the universe has suddenly grown. It merely means we have extended our reach, our sensitivity, our patience. The cosmos has been this size all along. We are simply catching up to its quiet vastness. These revisions, though occasionally framed with theatrical excitement, are in truth gentle readjustments, like stepping back from a painting to discover that its edges extend just slightly beyond the frame you imagined. The humor in this lies in how earnestly humans attempt to draw tidy borders around something so inherently untidy. It is a proud habit, estimating, defining, compartmentalizing. But the universe does not come packaged. It does not shrink to fit comfortable explanations. When we create models, the cosmos nods politely, lets us enjoy them for a time, and then gracefully delivers new information that slides beyond their margins. The correction is never scolding. It is merely factual, reminding us that the universe will continue to be itself, whether or not our expectations keep pace. To view these adjustments with calm appreciation is to embrace the slow refinement of understanding as a natural part of exploration. Each time, the observable universe becomes bigger than we thought. It is not a revelation meant to overwhelm. It is an invitation to widen the edges of thought just slightly, enough to include new data, new perspectives, new patience. These increments accumulate over centuries, transforming our conception of existence from a small, centered sphere into something open, dynamic, and continuously revealing. The phrase also points to something subtly beautiful, that the universe is generous in what it allows us to discover. The light from distant objects travels unimaginable distances, carrying messages that could easily have been lost to dust, collisions, or the gradual cooling of ancient energy. And yet, these signals arrive, soft, stretched, fragile, but intact. They expand our maps, correct our assumptions, and remind us that discovery is not a sudden spotlight, but a slow dawn. As this chapter settles into its final moments, the meaning of bigger than we thought becomes a quiet reassurance rather than a surprise. The universe is not shifting or changing to elude comprehension. It is simply steady, vast, and consistently more generous than our outlines anticipate. With each adjustment, our understanding grows, not to chase the universe, but to better accompany it. In this gentle reframing, the cosmos remains exactly what it has always been, while our perception becomes just a little more spacious, ready to receive the next whisper of light from the far distance. Chapter 12. Limits that belong to us, not the cosmos. In this chapter, the narration settles into a gentler, more philosophical rhythm. It turns its attention not toward the universe itself, but toward the boundaries that seem to surround it, boundaries that, upon closer reflection, belong entirely to us. The observable universe is often spoken of with a kind of quiet authority, as though its edges are features of the cosmos, rather than the contours of our own perception. Yet these limits arise from the reach of light, the passage of time, and the sensitivity of our instruments, not from any structure that marks the end of existence. The universe does not end where we stop seeing. It simply continues, indifferent to whether its distant regions have had time to introduce themselves. This distinction invites a softer understanding of cosmic scale. We often imagine the observable universe as a sphere, a vast radiant bubble with ourselves near the center, able to glimpse only as far as light has traveled since the earliest moments. But the sphere is not a cosmic object. It is a map folded neatly around our perspective. If someone stood on a distant planet in another corner of the cosmos, their observable sphere would expand around them with equal authority. Each vantage point creates its own set of limits, none of which define the universe itself. They define only what can be known from within a particular moment and place. There is a quiet comfort in realizing this. Limits can sometimes feel confining, as though they suggest that the cosmos becomes unknowable beyond a certain point. But when the boundaries belong to our tools and not to the universe, they lose their weight. They become less like walls and more like softly drawn pencil lines, useful for orientation, but never mistaken for the landscape. And unlike walls, these limits shift gently over time. As light from distant regions continues its long journey toward us, our horizon widens, not because the universe changes, but because our moment in time expands. It can be tempting to imagine these boundaries as meaningful, perhaps even as thresholds between the known and the unknown. Yet the universe places no such distinctions upon itself. It does not recognize horizons or define regions of visibility. It exists in a continuous expanse, one that pays no attention to which parts have managed to send light far enough, long enough, and clearly enough for us to detect. Our cosmic horizon is a function of waiting. The universe itself is not waiting for anything. This leads to a curious, almost poetic truth. We do not observe the universe as it is, but as it was, filtered through time and limited by distance. Much of what exists beyond our horizon is neither hidden nor mysterious in any deliberate sense. It is simply too far away for its earliest light to have completed the journey. The cosmos does not obscure itself. It is our particular vantage point, our particular moment, that obscures what lies beyond. Such limits encourage humility, though not the heavy kind. Instead, they invite a gentle awareness that our knowledge is partial and always will be. Partial knowledge is not a failure. It is the natural state of beings living inside the system they are trying to understand. We cannot step outside the universe to survey its full breadth. We remain immersed within it, gathering fragments of information that drift across unimaginable distances. And yet, even from this interior view, the picture that emerges is astonishingly coherent. There is a softness in acknowledging that what we call the universe is actually the portion that has revealed itself to us so far. Beyond that region, existence continues with the same quiet persistence as the space we can observe. Galaxies form, stars ignite, worlds orbit, and cosmic structures evolve, unbothered by whether any of their light reaches the small cluster of observers who wonder about them. If these distant regions could communicate, they might gently reassure us that they are doing quite well, thank you, and will send updates when the light arrives. The humor here is subtle, tucked between the lines like a small ripple in a calm sea. It lies in realizing that the boundaries we sometimes treat with dramatic significance are simply the result of cosmic messages being en route. The universe is not mysterious because it hides things. It is mysterious because it is large, and because we are patient enough to wait, but not always patient enough to wait the billions of years required for every corner to speak. Understanding this softens the idea of limitation. It becomes less an obstacle and more a recognition of our place in time. The observable universe expands as more light arrives. Our instruments improve, our methods refine, and the picture grows richer. But the totality of existence does not shrink to meet our abilities. It continues unconcerned, following its own rhythms. The limits are ours alone. As this chapter draws toward its quiet close, the narration leans gently into acceptance, not resignation, but a peaceful acknowledgement that partial knowledge is enough. It is enough to build models, to explore patterns, to marvel at structures, and to find beauty in the fragments we receive. The universe does not owe us completeness. It offers what it can through the pathways of time and light, and what it offers is already more than the imagination could reasonably expect. And so the chapter settles on this truth. The horizon we see is a boundary of perception, not of existence. Beyond it, the cosmos continues in serene indifference, expanding, evolving, and carrying on with the graceful continuity it has maintained since the earliest moments. What we cannot observe is still there, vast and unconcerned, waiting quietly for its light to arrive. One day, if we are patient enough, across the great and gentle dark. Chapter 13, A Universe Still Becoming Visible. In this chapter, the narration eases into a tranquil appreciation of discovery as something gradual and unfolding rather than an arrival. The universe, even after billions of years, is still in the process of becoming visible to us. Not because it is changing its nature for our benefit, but because its oldest light is still traveling, and our instruments are still learning how to listen. The picture is not fixed. It grows richer with each new signal, each new observation, each quiet evening when a telescope turns its gaze toward the deep sky and waits. This ongoing revelation is not hurried. Nothing about the universe demands quick interpretation. The cosmos maintains no schedules, sets no deadlines, and issues no reminders that its next chapter is due. Instead, it unfolds at its own expansive pace, offering glimpses of distant eras as their light drifts into view. Discovery becomes less a race for information and more a patient companionship, a long-term relationship between observers and the reality they are trying to understand. The James Webb Space Telescope embodies this companionship. Positioned delicately in its distant orbit, it does not act as though it must capture everything at once. Instead, it works slowly, gathering faint signals over long exposures, allowing the smallest traces of ancient radiance to accumulate. Each observation is like collecting dewdrops overnight, not forced, not rushed, simply received as they arrive. And when the images finally form, they do so with a softness that reflects the patience invested in their making. The universe does not reveal itself with grand gestures. It appears gradually, the way a landscape emerges through lifting mist. This sense of emergence extends beyond Webb. Every generation of instruments has participated in this gradual unveiling. Early telescopes revealed moons, then star clusters, then galaxies. Later ones revealed nebulae shaped by stellar winds, filaments stretching across cosmic voids, and structures that defy easy description. No single instrument completes the picture. Each contributes one more piece, one more layer, one more carefully interpreted whisper. Together, they build an understanding that grows not by leaps, but by steady refinement. There is a peacefulness in acknowledging that this process will continue long after any particular moment in history. The universe is vast enough and light slow enough that even if humanity perfects its instruments, there will always be regions whose light has yet to reach us. Discovery is not something that ends. It is something that remains open-ended, inviting curiosity across centuries. It reassures us that mystery is not a barrier, but a companion, walking quietly beside knowledge rather than standing defiantly opposite it. This ongoing nature of discovery also shapes how astronomers think about progress. Rather than seeking definitive answers, they learn to appreciate provisional ones, interpretations that are meaningful now, yet flexible enough to evolve when new information arrives. The universe encourages this approach gently, offering data that is clear in some places and ambiguous in others. It is as if the cosmos prefers a dialogue rather than a declaration, revealing enough to spark understanding while leaving room for further reflection. In this dialogue, time plays a central role. The universe does not become visible at once because light itself requires time to cross immense distances. The earliest stars, the first galaxies, the structures that formed in the wake of cosmic dawn, all of their stories are still traveling toward us. Their messages are ancient, yet perpetually new upon arrival. As each wave of light reaches our detectors, it adds to a narrative that grows longer and deeper. It is a narrative measured in billions of years, yet experienced in moments of quiet observation. There is a soft humor in this arrangement. Humanity, with its fondness for finishing lines and completed projects, has built advanced telescopes only to discover that the universe has no intention of concluding its revelations anytime soon. The cosmos will continue sending light from regions we have yet to imagine, and each generation of observers will discover that their understanding, however detailed, is still delightfully incomplete. The universe, if it were inclined to commentary, might remind us that patience is not just a virtue. It is a prerequisite for cosmic companionship. This unhurried unfolding also offers philosophical reassurance. It suggests that understanding does not require immediacy. Knowledge can drift into awareness the way starlight drifts into telescopes, gradually, quietly, and without forcing itself. There is no need to grasp everything at once. The act of observing becomes meaningful not because it produces instant clarity, but because it affirms a connection, a long-distance relationship between a small world of observers and a vast universe revealing itself in its own time. The chapter lingers on this idea, allowing it to settle gently. The universe is not a puzzle demanding urgent solution. It is a presence, still sending pieces of its story across unimaginable distances. It grows more visible only as we grow more attentive. It becomes richer only as we allow ourselves the time to perceive it without haste. The telescope, in its cold, steady orbit, is not racing the speed of light or competing with cosmic timescales. It is simply waiting, trusting that what the universe has to offer will arrive when it is ready. And so, the chapter concludes with a tone of serene companionship. Discovery is not a sprint toward completeness. It is a shared journey between the observer and the observed, a slow, ongoing conversation carried on through the faintest beams of ancient light. The universe continues to reveal itself patiently, and we, in turn, meet it with instruments tuned to quiet attention, ready to welcome whatever new whispers drift in from the deep and distant dark. Chapter 14, Standing Still While Everything Expands. In this chapter, the narration turns quietly back toward the listener, allowing the scale of the universe to drift into a more intimate frame. After traveling through distant galaxies, early epochs, and the stretching of space, the journey returns to a simple truth. From where we stand, everything seems still. The Earth rotates gently beneath our feet, orbits steadily around its star, and drifts with the Milky Way through a widening cosmos. Yet none of these motions announce themselves. They are too smooth, too balanced, too vast in scale to press against the senses. We rest in a moment that feels motionless, even while space around us expands with effortless continuity. It is one of the universe's stranger kindnesses that cosmic expansion does not intrude on daily life. If space grows everywhere, one might imagine we would feel some faint tug, some subtle drift, a widening sensation as the fabric between galaxies lengthens. But expansion is not something that rushes past like a breeze. It is not a force applied to objects within space. It is the quiet growth of space itself, unfolding at scale so immense that the tiny regions we inhabit remain comfortably insulated from its reach. Gravity holds our solar system together with far more strength than expansion could ever muster. On planetary scales, the universe's stretching is little more than a faraway rumor, true, significant, but completely unnoticeable amid the closeness of everyday environments. And so we stand still. Not absolutely still, of course. Our world is gently in motion in every possible direction. Yet the stillness that matters is perceptual. It is a stillness that allows us to live without sensing the universe's grand rearrangements. We do not feel Earth's million-kilometer journey around the sun each year, nor the solar system's slow drift through the galaxy, nor the vast, quiet separation between galaxy clusters. These motions exceed the scale at which bodies, nerves, and thoughts can respond. They pass beneath awareness, like deep ocean currents beneath a calm surface. The contrast between cosmic motion and human stillness offers a sense of grounding. It suggests that the universe can expand at extraordinary scales while leaving small corners of existence undisturbed. We live in one such corner, sheltered not by walls but by perspective. Our senses evolved to detect the immediate, sound carried through air, movement across land, the rhythm of footsteps, wind, and breath. They did not evolve to detect the expansion of space tens of millions of light years away, and in a quiet way, that limitation is a gift. It lets us experience the universe as steady, reliable, and hospitable, even while it changes shape across unreachable distances. The tranquility of this stillness invites reflection. To exist on a planet that is constantly moving through expanding space, yet feel none of it, is to participate in a grand arrangement of scales. At the scale of galaxies, we are drifting. At the scale of star systems, orbiting. At the scale of the planet, rotating. At our own scale, at the scale of a person standing quietly, breathing softly, there is only calm. The body registers stability, and the mind follows, unable to sense the vast choreography unfolding beyond its reach. There is gentle humor here as well, nestled within the contrast. Humanity, perched on a moving world in a drifting galaxy, frequently declares itself stationary without hesitation. We speak of the ground beneath us as if it were anchored in place, and we treat our location as though it were the center of all motion. The universe, polite as always, does not correct us. It continues its expansion with steady indifference, allowing us to believe, if only for convenience, that we are still. After all, at the scale of a single life, we are. The chapter lingers on this stillness, letting it settle into the imagination like a soft weight. Even as galaxies grow farther apart, nothing around us strains or trembles. The chair beneath the listener remains grounded. The walls around them stay in place. The room does not dilate or shift, and the night sky remains fixed from one breath to the next. Expansion acts only across the vast spaces between galaxy clusters, where gravity's hold is too faint to resist the widening of the cosmic fabric. Here, on a planet warmed by a local star and bound by local forces, we live in a pocket of serenity untouched by the universe's large-scale motions. To appreciate this contrast is to understand that stillness can exist within motion, and stability can reside within change. The universe is dynamic, but not chaotic. It shifts with the grace of something comfortable in its own immensity. Nothing hurries it, and nothing pauses it. It expands the way a slow tide rises, imperceptibly from moment to moment, but inevitably across longer scales. For the listener, this chapter becomes a kind of resting point. Having traveled through concepts vast and abstract, the mind is invited to return to its own experience, the quiet of the room, the steadiness of breath, the unchanging sense of place. The universe grows, and we rest. This juxtaposition is not contradictory. It is harmonious. It allows the vastness of the universe to coexist with the calm of personal stillness, each reinforcing the other. And so, the chapter closes in a serene rhythm. The cosmos expands, softly, without urgency. Galaxies drift apart in distances too great to comprehend. Space stretches in silence. And here, at the scale of a single observer, in a single moment, everything is still, steady as a heartbeat, calm as a held breath, resting gently in the vast and quiet widening of the universe. Chapter 15. The Comfort of an Unfinished View. In this final chapter, the narration settles into an ease that feels almost like dusk, soft, unhurried, and gently widening. Here, the idea takes shape that the universe does not owe us completeness, nor do we need to see all of it for it to be meaningful. There is a quiet reassurance in that incompleteness, a sense that the cosmos can remain partially veiled without causing frustration. Instead, the unfinished view becomes a source of comfort, a reminder that mystery and understanding can sit peacefully side by side. The observable universe stretches around us in every direction, immense and intricate, but always bounded by what light has managed to deliver. Beyond that reach lies an expanse that continues without interruption, indifferent to whether we are aware of it. This is not a limitation to lament. It is simply a condition of being observers within time. The cosmos offers what it can through the signals that have arrived, and the rest drifts toward us at its own patient pace. There is something soothing in accepting that much of existence remains beyond sight, not by design, but because it has not yet had time to speak. As the narration slows further, the mind is invited to consider how rarely in life we encounter anything truly finished. Landscapes shift, seasons blend, and even the most complete stories leave questions unspoken. The universe follows the same gentle principle. It reveals enough for wonder, enough for reflection, enough for companionship, but never so much that mystery evaporates. The unfinished edges of our cosmic view are not flaws but soft boundaries, dissolving into regions where imagination and possibility continue the picture. The vastness that lies beyond observation does not press for attention. It simply exists calmly, like a distant shoreline obscured by fog. You know the land continues past the mist, even if the details remain hidden. The universe carries that same quiet presence, a continuation sensed rather than seen. It allows us to gaze outward without demanding that we comprehend everything at once. In the calm of late hours, that partial view feels generous. It grants space for curiosity without urgency, space for thought without pressure, space for a kind of cosmic breathing room. There is also a gentle humor in how earnestly humanity tries to complete the picture. We build instruments to reach farther, decipher patterns, and reveal new stretches of sky, all while the universe expands at a pace too slow for urgency and too steady to ever conclude. It is as though we are trying to finish reading a book that is still being written, one that calmly adds chapters long before we finish the earlier ones. Yet the universe never rushes us. It seems quietly content to let us explore at our own tempo. This unfinished quality fosters a particular kind of peace. It invites us to rest in the idea that not everything must be known, at least not now. There is comfort in open horizons, those spaces where the mind can drift freely, unbounded by conclusion. The night sky offers such a horizon each time we look up. It does not present itself as a solved puzzle or a closed narrative. Instead, it suggests continuity, that what we see is only part of something larger, something ongoing, something that will still be unfolding long after our moment has passed. As we rest, within this understanding, the notion of expansion takes on a gentle tone. Space grows, but without haste. Time flows, but without insistence. Light travels, but without expectation of arrival. Everything in the cosmos participates in processes that extend far beyond the rhythms of human life. Rather than leaving us feeling small, this perspective can create a sense of spaciousness, as though we are being granted permission to slow our thoughts, to move at a pace closer to the universe's own quiet unfolding. The listener is invited to imagine themselves within this spaciousness, held not at the center of things, but comfortably inside an unfinished view. The observable universe becomes less a boundary and more a reminder that knowledge comes in waves, carried across time and distance like soft light, drifting through a widening night. What has not yet arrived is simply part of the story still making its journey. And what has arrived, these faint signals from distant epochs, is more than enough to contemplate for now. The chapter does not reach for a conclusion. Instead, it allows the thought to taper softly. That the universe's incompleteness, from our perspective, is not a problem to solve, but a condition to appreciate. The cosmos remains open, uncontained, neither demanding full comprehension nor offering it. It is a presence that extends calmly outward, long past the edges of sight, long past the edges of time we can meaningfully grasp. The narration drifts outward here, connecting the unfinished view to the deep quiet of night. Just as the dusk does not need to reveal every star for the sky to feel expansive, the universe does not need to reveal every detail for its presence to be felt. The horizon of what we see becomes a gentle threshold, not a dividing line. On one side rests the familiar, on the other the ongoing dark, where new light is still en route. In this spacious uncertainty, the listener is invited to rest. The cosmos continues its slow expansion. Stars continue their ancient journeys, and light continues its patient travel. Nothing demands haste. Nothing insists upon closure. The universe is unfinished, and in that unfinished state, it becomes a serene companion, vast enough to hold all curiosity, calm enough to soothe all restlessness, and generous enough to leave room for wonder long after the eyes begin to close.